the Tap. My name is Frankie, and this is my co-host.
And the man.
We are excited to talk to you about RC Atlanta. But before we do, Stan, tell me about Christmas. You excited for the holidays? And what do you have any like special traditions or things that you do regularly?
I'm exhausted. I think, well, growing up, I didn't celebrate Christmas, so not really, no traditions or anything. But I do have plans to go visit my aunt, who I was just at her house earlier today, helping out my little cousin with his new gaming computer and whatnot, setting him up with some free games. He's like, I want to play Fortnite and Apex and everything. I'm like, I got you, bro. What's your email? But yeah, no really like no real Christmas tradition, stuff like that or anything. What about you?
So we spend like the morning at my in-laws, and they keep the tradition that they did when my wife was a kid. So we are up at 6 a.m. still, which I'm really bummed about, only because like that's what my little cousins did my whole life. And so it would be like, oh man, now that I'm older, I want to sleep in. Got that for like a few years, and then I got married, and it's like, oh, back to 6 a.m. Only benefit is that because like I'm splitting time between her family and my family, like it helps us like maximize our time, you know? But
yeah, I actually almost would prefer that. Like, even though it sucks getting up early, like on vacation days, it's like, well, I get to do the whole day. Like, we're going to do the whole day.
Yeah. So that's what we do. We are at her family in the morning and do gifts there. Then go to my family, do with all of like the 25 of us. Then go back to her family and have duck for dinner because she doesn't want to have turkey and duck. Or she doesn't have turkey twice a year. Sure. So like duck is the Christmas bird. So I'm really,
that's awesome.
Really excited.
Usually it's like ham at white people's house for Christmas. And I got to tell you, man, anytime I went to like an ex's Christmas or like a white person's Christmas and I was like, ham? And that's it. Oh, and there's salami on the board. Okay. Well, I'm gonna eat that because I love salami and I don't
charcuterie.
like ham. Yeah, charcuterie. Yes. I'm gonna eat 40 of these cheese balls because you guys made ham.
Because you have a
or
ham.
Dinner.
I will tell you though, as a white person, we do have ham on Thanksgiving. We have a turkey that's
told me.
Smoked. We have a normal turkey, then we have. And I really like ham.
That's fine. If you're gonna like mix it with other stuff, totally cool.
But just ham?
Yeah, it's a little
too much.
Should be punishable by law.
Straight to jail.
Yeah, exactly. Temporary lockdown.
Which we'll talk about a lot today. And how's your standard prepping going? Like, do you have an idea of like a deck that you want to be playing for?
I have been prepping absolutely no standard lately. I've been playing a lot of RuneScape if I even get time off of work. No, for real though. I've been looking at the standard meta, but I kind of like feel if I practice too early, I'm gonna burn myself out. And I know Karlov Manor is gonna be legal, so I really, really want to like not play too much into this meta that I think is gonna change a lot in the next coming weeks. I know people are like pretty set on, oh, Esper midrange or Azorius midrange looks really good. Looks like it's gonna be the best deck. But blue-white control is coming up pretty well, which is what I've been playing myself. Oh, but if you're playing the Legends deck, it's still pretty good. Oh, but Domain Ramp is still really good. Like, nobody really knows. Everybody kind of likes what they like, and everybody's really talking mostly with bias currently. There's no real... I don't think we have enough data for people to be saying, like, oh, this deck's for sure going to be played at the RC. Like, they're just capping. But, as far as like what I want to play, so far it's looking like a Dimir or sorry, not Dimir, an Azorius or a Esper control list, just because it seems like it's something I'd be more comfortable with. I like late game decks more than I like mid range if I'm gonna have to go for that archetype. So as much as the Azorius or Esper mid range decks look really good, and I like cards like Wedding Announcement, I'd rather take some of those mid range aspects and either sideboard them or try them out in the control deck. Then I would like be forced to play a deck that I just don't enjoy or may not even be as good at as somebody else that's really good at mid-range.
Yeah, I'd say that like the majority of mid-range decks that I play, like Pioneer, is like 5-color, like where you're going way, way over the top.
Yeah.
Or I played Rakdos mid-range for a bit, and it feels a little bit like Rakdos mid-range because I am playing the Esper mid-range list. But part of my problem of like when I've been testing, because I think that I'll be in Diamond for best of one, but the like playing Subterranean Schooner and then having these pieces like Wedding Announcement where you're like building this really big board that ends up going wide, like feels weird for like a mid-range list. And so figuring out like when you're sequencing what, and that part's difficult. And I've found to be like matchup dependent. What I've really liked is it's starting to feel like Rakdos mid-range and Pioneer, where like, oh, I'm out of things to do. I've got Den of the Bugbear and like Hive of the Eye Tyrant that you have like a really hard time dealing. And like I won a game today where I was playing against, I think, Domain or a control list, and they like depopulated and sunfalled, I think 5 times, but then I was just winning with like, I had Wedding Announcements out, and so my Restless Anchorage was like a 5/6.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, and then another creature, and you're dead. So
yeah,
that part I have been enjoying about the deck.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense in manlands as a win condition are nice. Partially why I was enjoying the blue eye control deck already. One of the reasons why I liked 2-color more was because I could play Field of Ruins as well as like the manlands, and it felt really good to like have the answer to kind of everything with that and Farewell, and now Get Lost, because I think Get Lost is just significantly better than what we were playing before, the one that gives them a clue.
Fateful Absence.
Fateful Absence. I was gonna say something else, but yeah, Fateful Absence just didn't feel nearly as good as what Get Lost is doing, especially because you can just answer all the creatures that are exploring. Popping a creature that you want to kill anyway in response to them activating a map always feels really nice.
Yeah, the
draw card is annoying.
Yeah, the value of like you give someone those tokens and then like a temporary lockdown hits, and then you're like, oh, I lose those tokens anyway, so there was no downside for them.
Yeah.
Or where they then go to explore on a different creature, and then you remove that creature, and it's like you got no downside for playing Get Lost. And I was like, it's so, that's
it's so bad that they have to use that at sorcery speed, because you can have your way with them as a result. And the clue was always like, well, I'm going to draw a card because you're making me, or I'll draw a card because I need it. And now you have more cards that I just didn't need to have to play around. So yeah, for sure, Get Lost has been really nice, as we'll see, because the RC was very interesting. With that being said, we'll get into some quick housekeeping. Shout outs to you guys for keeping the lights on, giving us lots of views. We've been getting so many views on YouTube lately. It's been really nice. If you haven't already checked us out on YouTube, please toss us a subscription. It is free. We'd love to have you in our community. And if you're new here, then welcome. And if you have any questions, hit us up on our Discord, where we post all the new deck lists. There's been a lot of spice new deck lists, and I've been posting pictures and talking about them with the rest of the players in the Discord. So we'll have the link down below if you want to join us there as well. Everything will be in a link tree, so you can see all of our different socials or ways to reach us.
Next is Patreon. For those of you that don't know the different perks of our Patreon, that's just if you want to, support our show a little extra. Is definitely not a requirement. Our show will always be free to those that want to listen. But if you do want to give back, we do give you some additional perks. The first perk is getting additional access and additional channels that we have on the Discord. Beyond that, you can get the episode a day early, so you can listen to us live before anyone else does. Then you can have deck lists that you can submit to us that we play on stream or streaming in the Discord. And I've both been starting to stream more, which is great. And then at the top tier, you have the ability to get a coaching session with us in the format that you'd like a couple times a month. I think it's once.
Yeah, once a month. But either way, the coaching session has been fun. I've been doing it with some of the guys. We'll just get on Discord. We'll start running it. I recently had one of our players go, I don't know what to play in Modern. I'm getting crushed on the deck I like, and I don't enjoy it anymore. What should I play? And we just got on a call right away, and I'm like, well, let's break down the meta. What does it look like? What is your play style? Why are we playing X, Y, and Z? And literally my friend's laughing because as I'm talking to one of the guys, my other buddy's in the background laughing. He's like, I'm here with him, and he's ordering all the cards you're talking about as we speak on TCG Player. I'm like, Boar's Hat Gaming, did you mean? But yeah, so we'd love to help you guys out we can help you out at any skill level. If you're low and you feel like you can't get better, we can definitely help you get better. And if you're already good and you want to just play test, we can just help you grind out a matchup and get you there, get you ready for your RCQs or even your RCs. Like we had a bunch of our friends down in Atlanta this past weekend.
Yeah, and on top of that, I think that it's a great time to get help with stuff like that if you're wanting to understand sideboarding and sideboard guides, because we're going to a big Chicago event for Standard, and so if you want help with Standard and sideboarding, like now's the time to check that out. The other thing that we haven't mentioned that we do on the Patreon is the first time you join, we give a shout out to you, and with that, thank you, Christian, for joining the Patreon. We're super excited to have you and really appreciate the support.
That's our second Christian on Patreon.
Yeah, not
Very
confusing
cool.
at all, but we do appreciate you're here.
Speaking of Christian, our other Christian was the guy I was talking about with helping him out for Modern.
Yeah. Otherwise, you can check us out on our socials. Twitter is where we're posting a lot of stuff. I'm posting deck lists that I do well with. Stan is posting all the great content that he sees that are coming from other places.
Yeah, I'll definitely try to
memes.
interact with people on Twitter. If you see stuff, tag me in it. I want to interact. I want to engage with the community on Twitter specifically, where we engage with our personal community on our Discord. And then for those that haven't already, if you want to give us a follow on Twitch, we are starting to stream more specifically on Twitch. And we'll probably start streaming some of our coaching sessions if people would like as well, so they can save the VOD and be able to review back on their former gameplay and to maybe see where they improved in the future, or just to look back on a previous lesson from a week ago that they might want to have recapped on, etc.
Yeah, and we get from YouTube about 15% of like all of our viewers subscribe. So please, outside of you getting more notifications for our videos, that's the only downside to subscribing to us on YouTube. So come on, help us out. You gotta give.
You gotta give. Anyways, we definitely appreciate you guys, and for the viewers that are just here with us hanging out, shout out to you guys as well. With that being said, we gotta get into some RC Atlanta, but before we do so, there was a little bit of drama I wanted to talk about, just because one, it was cool drama. It wasn't like people versus people. It was more of magic drama, and the cool magic drama I always find interesting. I wish I had a better write-up for it, because I had all these tweets saved on my computer to reference when I was going to talk about this, and then most of them got deleted when I went to go check back today as a result of the judges changing the ruling at the last minute, and people didn't want to have misinformation out there, which I appreciate. But some of the information I felt that was deleted was actually pretty helpful for players like us that want to understand why things were happening. With that being said, I'm going to give you a pretty butchered version of what it was like, of what the result was, so that you guys can have like a very brief understanding. Not going to be as technical though, so if you want the more technical, detailed version for those that care, hit me up in Discord. I'll go hit up one of my friends that's a judge, or I'll go find better resources to cite the specific rules that affected what ended up happening. But to talk about it, there's this new Amalia combo deck. We've definitely seen it, and it's pretty scary. So can you tell the viewers what Amalia does?
Yeah, so Amalia, I'm going to pull it up so I don't get it wrong, is a 2-mana creature. It is white and black, and is a 2/2 or a 3/3?
I believe she is a 2/2.
Okay, well, I'm going to pull it up just to be sure. And
no
wow,
problem.
first thing.
Awesome.
So, Amalia, legendary creature, vampire scout with ward, pay 3 life. Whenever you gain life, Amalia explores. Then destroy all other creatures if its power is exactly 20.
Right. So, unfortunately, they kind of flopped on this design. First of all, ward, pay 3 life. Like, come on, man. Like, they already had like 40 other cards, sentences on the card. But
right.
Anyways, ward, pay 3 life is not that big a deal. The problem was that they said on her ability, it has a conditional trigger that's if she's at exactly 20 life. So there are ways that this can be
You mean 20
avoid.
counters?
Sorry, 20 power. Apologies.
Yeah.
If she's at exactly 20 power. So 20 life is what we start at, which is why she was able to one-shot, which is the combo. But with Wild Growth Walker, which is a 2-mana, 1 green, 1 generic, 1/3 from original Ixalan, it's a 2-card combo, so it feels like they kind of should have seen something like this coming and designed the card a little bit better, but neither here nor there. Wild Growth Walker says whenever you explore, put a counter on it, and then you gain 3 life. So because you're gaining life as a result of exploring, it's just an instant combo with Amalia, where as soon as you have that, Amalia is going to get to 20 power. You're going to have explored X number of times until her power is 20, and then you're going to destroy all other creatures on board. Once that happens, you should have a 20/20 Amalia. There should be no other creatures in play, and then you can just attack for 20, and your opponent, in theory, should be dead, which is a combo that you can pretty consistently get done on turn 3 or 4. It's a pretty resilient creature combo. Obviously, it's dice to removal type of thing. But if you have cards like Return to the Ranks, Board of Calling, etc., that they've been playing in the deck, and the cards that they play in the deck are like Prosperous Innkeeper, and cards that just either give you mana or gain you life or extend your game plan, give you the ability to convoke, etc., it is a pretty strong deck. So as a result, this deck needed to be addressed, and the interaction specifically is that if Amalia is greater than 20 power, or Wild Growth Walker gains indestructible somehow, which is pretty rare but possible, then the combo never stops. She keeps exploring because she never destroys all creatures, or she can't destroy the Wild Growth Walker, and he just keeps gaining the life for you, which keeps triggering the Amalia. So the initial ruling, and I believe the ruling that was applied at RC Barcelona 2 weeks ago, was the player doesn't have to mill themselves out because they can just keep leaving the card on top with Explore. What does that mean? Well, I'm not going to be able to explain it as well as a judge could, but there's 2 kind of separate loops that happen with this specific combo, where you can argue that the combo is infinite and that the exploring isn't a part of necessarily the combo itself, but it's Wild Growth Walker interacting with Amalia. And then there's another part where you can more or less think of it as a sub loop, where exploring itself is part of the loop. And if you treat it that way, then the explore, with nothing else to break the interaction, should be required to make you mill the card and then draw the land, and to the point where your deck is gone. But once that happens, your opponent can choose to interact with removal should they have it, and then you have no deck, which usually kills you if you're in that situation, because you won't have a library to draw from. So that ended up being what there was a disagreement about, and because the judges couldn't agree and Wizards of the Coast hadn't gotten back to them with information, they didn't know how to go about it. So at Barcelona, I'm pretty sure they ruled the player doesn't have to mill. The judges said the same thing was going to be applied at Atlanta, so we were all kind of under the understanding that it was going to be at Atlanta. They don't have to mill either, even though we found out now that they should. Wizards finally gave the announcement that they want them to mill out, but the judges were like, well, we already gave this ruling, so we're going to apply it for this tournament specifically. And then Wizards was like, actually, no, make them mill anyway. And then that kind of sparked another fire where people were like, okay, well, now it's even later news, and so we have less time to prep. But overall, it's a pretty niche interaction. It doesn't happen too frequently. And the correct ruling, and the more in the spirit of the game ruling, is that they should mill themselves out, because they are the player in essence creating the infinite loop that is the issue. So it was pretty interesting, and it's just a funny, quirky interaction that'll go down in Magic history. We'll see some YouTube videos about it pretty soon, or in a couple of years when people go back and go, remember that deck? If it ends up getting banned or whatever. But it was just interesting. I don't know if Amalia will get banned. Some people think it will because it's too good. Some people think it will because it's kind of annoying. I think the deck is fine. It is pretty cool. But anyways, we'll talk about the rest of RC Atlanta now that we've brought up that drama that kind of more or less was impacting the tournament.
Yeah, that, I'm not going to lie, that whole thing just makes me like visibly angry, only because like, how often is Wild Growth Walker going to not die when we hit 20? That interaction sounds so like, so niche that it's like,
well, it just kept happening. Like there was people posting photos from Moto where it happened, and then
but what gives indestructibility to make it do that?
I don't know. I was just seeing the photos of the stack already happened. And like I said, a lot of the tweets where I had saved are all deleted. So I wish I had more info for you guys. It just, all the stuff that I normally would have screen capped, I didn't have time to, and then the tweets got deleted.
Sure. And just so everyone is aware, like what is enabling, because you still need life gain in that combo. The main 2 cards are, as he mentioned, Prosperous Innkeeper. The other one is Narc veteran, the 1/1 from Midnight Hunt that you gain a life every time a creature enters
a lot
the
of Soul
battlefield.
Sisters.
Yeah. So though, and Dina, there's one Dina.
Well,
like,
Dina's in
the
there as a
deck.
one of because I believe you can drain and gain.
Drain and gain. That's right.
So
Yeah.
Dina kind of facilitates the problem of like, well, if I have the Dina now, I don't have to hit you for 20. I can just
Yeah. Ping out. Which
really
I've had
nice.
happen to me online, and you feel sad.
For sure.
But with that being said, RC Atlanta, and what went down there, the top like 10 decks, like what we saw in the quarterfinals did not feel like particularly exciting outside of, Amalia combo really made an appearance and was in the quarter, or like in the top 8. But I do think that, we got to see a handful of decks, a couple of which I really like, got to resurge a little bit. And the big like takeaway for me was like, blue white control is like back.
Yeah, that was kind of cool. Blue control is definitely back, and it was a really good choice. I think it ended up being the correct choice if you follow like the statistics and the data. It had something close to like a 40% conversion rate for day 2, which is really high considering it wasn't even the most played deck, but it was I think second or third most played. A lot of Phoenix, which is awesome. We talked about how we really like the Phoenix deck, and is that Phoenix was all over the place. Some people were playing the Grixis version. I personally still think the Grixis version is more what I would prefer to play, just because Bitter Ordeal and Thoughtseize, or not Bitter Ordeal, I keep saying that, Bitter Triumph and Thoughtseize are just so good. But I did hear that people were having trouble getting cards at the RC specifically, so maybe people just couldn't get their Bitter Triumphs in time.
Yeah, that could be true. And I was actually thinking about this, and this is kind of like a tangent for you and I for later about deck building, but the only thing that I don't like about the Grixis list is actually 4 main board fatal pushes. Because outside of like if you're playing into a bunch of Phoenix, the thing you're really pushing is like Ledger Shredder, because you're never using Picklock Prankster as a creature. Most of the time you're using it as a spell, and you're like using it as a creature if you've got no mana to do anything else.
Sure.
And so I'm like, I don't really like 4 pushes. It feels like too many.
Too many with the Bitter Triumph as well, because now you just have like so much removal. I kind of rather have some in the sideboard for sure. I definitely agree.
Yeah.
Not to mention the blue red lists get to play otherworldly gaze like you were talking about, and they have just so many blue cantrips now. Not the otherworldly gaze cantrip, but so many more cards to play to keep triggering the Phoenix plan aggressively.
Right, which I really like that. But what I found interesting too is because I was just talking to you about that card and how I was like, oh man, I really like it. I feel like there should be more testing around otherworldly gaze, because you can just like in your Phoenixes or like really turbo your treasure cruises. And then I looked at the top like lists in the top 20, and none of them were running the card. And I was like, but they were running a 1 of Temporal Trespass and a 1 of Galvanic Iteration, which a lot of lists were going off of, which I think is interesting, and Izzet Charm, which I love because of the modality.
Yeah, I'm so glad that they brought back Izzet Charm, Temporal Trespass, and Galvanic Iteration, because I thought those cards were sweet. I think they were really good as 1-ofs, especially because you draw so many cards, you can sculpt your hand so perfectly. And besides Treasure Cruise, there's nothing else you're really delving for. So when your graveyard gets too big and the second and third Treasure Cruise don't matter as much, it's like, I wish I had that. And when they cut the Temporal Trespass, I was like, the Time Walk felt kind of nice in my opinion, but I guess I'm wrong. Or maybe it was just like Karn's a great creator, getting Graveyard Hate was just too good. Well, I guess we'll never know, because Karn kind of left the format and really wasn't doing anything when it did. So not that it matters. Either way, though, the most represented decks there's a ton of Phoenix. In the top 100 lists, Frank got us a list out. There was 11 Phoenix players. 1 specifically was Grixis. Everybody else was blue-red, which perfectly fine. Blue-red is just very, very good. You're not wrong if you're playing that. I just personally like the black because I'm a big fan of Thoughtseize. 20 Azorius control players, which people weren't even thinking about that deck, it feels like. Nobody was talking about it. Everybody was talking about Amalia. It felt like blue-white was like the big winner, and it was the big winner.
Yeah, and on top of it being a big winner, one of the things I wanted to note, because one of our friends who went down, who is like by far a much better Magic player than I am, went on the Lotus Field list. And for a long time, like the Lotus Field list was kind of the list to play. And it looks like the decks that did best that were blue-white control were actually just normal blue-white control.
Yeah, they were all away from it.
Field of Ruin, because I love playing Field.
Yeah, I love
in my blue-white control list. It does matter a lot. There are a lot of decks like, Grease Fang or Enigmatic Fires, like the 5-color lists where they've got one basic in their whole deck.
Yeah.
So if they've played it, you're just,
Yeah.
crushing them. And that feels great.
It also just like is interesting that some of these were playing Yorion as well. So I'm a big fan of Yorion. I mean, the card was crazy in Modern. I think it's only a matter of time before it's crazy in Pioneer, and it might start being close to that time.
Yeah, I am not the biggest fan of Yorion because I think it makes the deck less consistent, but the winner of the RC was a Yorion list.
Yeah.
And there were a good amount of Yorion lists in the top 100, so you can't say that it's bad.
I mean, at least at this point, currently, it's like one or the other is fine. Or like in Modern, it wasn't close; it was always Yorion. I feel like we're gonna get closer and closer to Yorion is just objectively correct. It's really good, and like the companion mechanic was definitely a mistake of all. If there were ever Magic mistakes, that one was definitely one.
Yeah, and the reason why Stan says that is because when we get enough cards that are powerful enough to like, oh, you're just never running out of gas because you have so many board wipes and planeswalkers, and then you're just like, okay,
Up the Beanstalk was not banned in Pioneer.
True.
It's only a matter of time. So, and Sunfall's a 5-drop. But anyways, the next most played deck. Well, I guess it wasn't the next most played deck. We had 22 Amalia combo decks in day.
So
day
it was
2, so
the
or
most
for top
played
100.
deck.
The most.
Well, the most played
decks.
in the top 100.
Yeah.
I don't know about overall.
Yeah, so 22 Amalia players in the top 100 for Lotus Field, which is interesting because I watched round 7 on camera, I believe, where Lotus Field was playing against the new Spelunking combo deck against Sophie Miller, and they played Spelunking combo into it, and it just felt like Spelunking was just like the better combo deck in the head-to-head. It was just so much more consistent. It was pretty interesting to see, but still a decent amount of Lotus players. Three Quintorius combo players in the top 100, which is kind of cool. Glad to see we got to see some Quintorius out there. Discover is not dead. I wonder how many people would be on Discover if they did a Magiological Appraiser. It'd be like 50 of these guys in the top 100.
Yeah, well, that's part of my feeling as to why like Karn wasn't doing anything like when Karn was banned, because that combo was so much better and so consistent that like, I don't know, mono green just took a back seat for like a full month.
Yeah.
And so it's like
even before though, it was already kind of on the downhill, and then it was just like just crazy. But anyways, so after that there was 11 Rakdos mid-range players, which is interesting because I would have thought there was going to be more Sacrifice players. I still think Sacrifice is a good deck and not a bad choice. It had a pretty decent conversion rate for day 2, but the mid-range deck just outperformed. Maybe this specific field allows Rakdos mid-range to have a better matchup specifically for like Amalia and the Phoenix players. So I don't know if either one is going to be good against blue-eye control, but definitely against Amalia, more removal, etc.
Yeah, and well, I guess we'll get into it when notable cards come up, but there are some changes to Rakdos mid-range that I'm like, okay, I get excited about this.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. The next deck is Enigmatic Fires. There were actually 5 of them in there, so shout outs to Frank and his Enigmatic Fire homies, because the deck is not going away.
I love it.
I thought that deck was trash, but I guess it's just not going away. It is fun, but personally I'm like, this deck is such a meme.
Well, I think that why the deck is staying relevant, and it's also why blue-white control did as well as it did, is because like if you look into the field, right, not necessarily Phoenix, but every deck beyond like non-combo decks, the Rakdos mid-range players are putting more 2-drops in their 2-drop creatures. Like Inti is going up, and Smuggler's Copter is in the deck, and Amalia combo is just like 2-drops.
Yeah, all 2-drops, right?
Temporary Lockdown is like a 3 or 4 of in Enigmatic Fires, and Temporary Lockdown is a 3 or 4 of in Blue-Eye Control. And so like a lot of those decks just lose so much to Lockdown, and then it's impossible for them to get back in the game.
Right.
And so that's part of why I think Enigmatic Fires is like there, is because the deck is already like, if you get to turn 4, it's really hard to lose. And Temporary Lockdown is like a big piece that gets you against a lot of what the other field is playing.
Yeah, it's definitely a big gotcha, especially with the combination of Get Lost, where you're just like destroying the maps as well. So gross. Next, we had Omnath to light. So there was actually a decent amount of 5-color players, 2 of them. And then 3 Boros Convoke, which we thought was really interesting. Boros Convoke felt like one of the more front runner decks, and it just didn't really perform very well. And I think a testament is probably that Amalia is a hard deck for them. Not to mention that Blue Eye Control, Phoenix, Rakdos are all just like a ton of removal. So maybe they just couldn't get past all the removal decks, and then the Life King combo deck is on top of all that.
Yeah, I think Boros Convoke, because you need to do the Convoke thing to then swing in. It's like if you don't have the ability, like if you get board wiped, you lose. That's pretty much how Boros Convoke works.
Yeah, and Lockdown is also
Amalia combo gains you life and wipes the board. So it's like, sorry.
Yep, and Lockdown stays good against them as well. It's just crazy.
And I love Amalia combo only in the sense that I'm like, finally, a Coco deck that is in the top 5 decks in Pioneer again. Coco is alive.
Yeah, Amalia combo feels a lot like the really old modern Selesnya, Absan, really bad creature combo, Malira, Ravenous, Death, or I forgot the name of the card. But like Kitchen Finks Infinite Life kind of deck, like those really bad Border Calling decks, even like Kiki Cord, just not, they were never like good decks, but they were always really fun to see. And when people played them, you kind of rooted for them because they were always going to be the underdog in the matchup. Besides like Birthing Pod, like Birthing Pod was obviously like the one that was like, okay, well, hold on a second. But we'll see. Anyways, the next one was 4 Rakdos sacrifice lists we talked about, and then 2 Grill vehicles. So Grill vehicles obviously got Smuggler's Copter back. 2 of them managed to make top 100. We did talk about Grill vehicles making a comeback. Didn't feel like they did that much. I've heard a lot of people talking about how Asika's Chariot doesn't feel like as good of a card now that Smuggler's Copter is back, and why some of the Greasefang players have been moving away from green as a result. Was because Asika's Chariot, it just doesn't feel as good. So some of the Greasefang players are playing like Mardu now, but no Greasefang players at all in the top 100. So I guess we're not going to talk about them for now. After that, there was 2 mono white humans, and then 1 mono black aggro, 1 Azorius Spirits, 1 Jund Transmogrify, which was for Atrex, I believe.
Yep.
And then
Transmogrify 4 Atrex.
Yeah, and then 1 4-color Auras, which is just like the Boggles deck for Pioneer. Pretty cool, honestly. Interesting top 100. We had a pretty clear top 3, though. I guess you could say top 4 if you count the Rakdos decks in like one clump. So like Phoenix, Rakdos, Azorius, Amalia, just up there, you know. So not close anybody else. There were some clear meta defining calls, and we're going to start seeing some interesting sideboard plans, I think, now that people kind of see what the established Pioneer meta realistically looks like.
Yeah. Does that mean that we're going to be trying to find really bad enchantment destruction for temporary lockdown?
I was thinking of thrashing Bronta down when you were talking about what you were saying. I was like, well, he's a 3. Pay 1 to sacrifice hidden enchantment. He's still a big boy. Maybe Mono Green can play him. I don't know. I like Thrashy B. We'll see.
Thrashy B.
Notable cards that were played. So we talked about Smuggler's Copter last time with the unban, and then we brought up how it was going to get played in Rakdos midrange, Rakdos Sacrifice, but it ended up in Rakdos midrange as well.
Yeah, and part of what I'm so excited about was I was thinking that they were going to like dial back on Fable of the Mirror Breaker to like make their curve a little bit lower, but they didn't. They just they just put them both together.
Yeah,
and I think what's so great about that is one, the interaction of with Shieldred, you never really wanted to block, because if they had something that like deals extra damage, like into Phoenix, like the Fiery Impulse, and then Shieldred dies, but you can then go ahead and crew Shieldred with, you might not want to do that in Blue Eye Control because you can still get like Emperored and then have Shieldred get nixed. But for other matchups, it's like, okay, I can then block in with Smuggler's Copter. The draw happens, so I'm going to gain the life with the Shieldred. Like, that feels awesome to me. And the thing that the deck struggled with is smoothing out its draws. So with Smuggler's Copter and Fable the Mirror Breaker, like they've got so much like smoothing now that it almost is probably going to replace Reckoner Bankbuster was in the slot. Smuggler's Copter.
100%.
And so I'm like, okay, like this looks sweet. And to adjust to like allow them to use Smuggler's Copter, they started putting Inti in as like an additional card, which I think is great if they're moving towards like being a mid-range plan that's a little bit more aggressive. Because then they are not going to get chumped into. Like, it felt bad if you were trying to be the aggro deck as Rakdos, because like if you're playing into like Lotus Field and it's like, oh well, I'll just throw my Arboreal Grazer in front of one of the 3 dudes you have or 2 dudes you have to attack with.
Right.
And Inti's like, oh, when I'm coming onto the battlefield, I'm discarding a card that doesn't matter. I'm giving something trample so you can block with the Arboreal Grazer, but at least I'm going to get a damage through with this Blood Tithe Harvester. And it's, you know, more cards. Another way for you to get cards. You're not drawing them with like Shieldred.
Yeah.
But I have not seen people explore yet, which I think is notable, that like you do get a trigger from Inti when you're discarding in other ways. You are discarding with Fable the Mirror Breaker. You are discarding with the Blood token. You still get the exile off the top.
Yeah, and Smuggler's Copter.
Yeah. So you're getting a lot. You're getting so much more consistency.
So many more discard effects now. It might be that Inti is just like actually a really good card for them, and not just like a cheeky, you know, we're trying this out.
Yeah, and so
I do like it though.
They moved from like having like being a 15 creature deck to like 19. It's just like more Intis and Smuggler's Copter, and which actually works well together because you need more creatures to crew Smuggler's Copter. So that's what I think is really interesting about Rakdos midrange. They're not on 3 Shieldreds anymore to kind of compensate for this, and I don't know.
I mean, they could always sideboard the Shieldreds, and I honestly really like the aggro plan more, where they have the option to be this like explosive deck. Now that we have Smuggler's Copter instead of Reckoner Brinkbuster, it kind of feels like the difference in power level from like a Tishana's Tidebinder versus a Nimble Obstructionist, where people are like, oh, Nimble Obstructionist is kind of like Tishana's, and it's like, no, it's not. It absolutely is not. I cannot begin to explain to you how different these cards are. And so like Reckoner Brinkbuster, good card, banned in standard, right? Draws a lot of cards, is a vehicle, makes bodies. Like, the card is good, but what Smuggler's Copter is doing for you in a fast format like Pioneer is like, I'm immediately drawing the cards. I'm immediately giving you a body. I'm an evasive 3-power creature, which 3 power is kind of like the magic number. If a guy can deal 3 damage consistently, Delver, stuff like that, Dragon Rage Channeler, that's always like the, you know what, that's just going to be good enough. This is going to hit you hard and a lot. And the fact that the discard can bonus with Inti, the fact that you're pulling out your draws now with Fable the Mirror Breaker, even better. Fable the Mirror Breaker immediately makes you a guy that can crew. So now like the chapter 1 doesn't suck as much, where you're just like, oh, I got a 2/2 nothing. Doesn't feel good until like an attack for a treasure. Smuggler's Copter gave this deck a lot, and it honestly gave the sacrifice version a lot too. The sacrifice version has such a better game plan now. It is. I was playtesting with my buddy for the RC, and he was just smoking me with the sacrifice version. Just didn't feel like it was the right call maybe for this tournament, as the standard mid-range version was just so much better. Probably as a result of them not being able to abuse Inti and sacrifice.
Yeah.
But Mayhem Devil is still nasty.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is that Amalia faster. I don't think Rakdos Sacrifice gave a hard time probably into Amalia combo.
I think I agree that they probably don't have as much removal as like the standard mid-range plan, but if they can get a Mayhem Devil out, it feels like they can at least try to keep their board trim. But yeah, I think in general it probably would be a harder matchup. I in testing, it felt like Sacrifice into Amalia was better. I think I was talking to Julian about it, who was also at the RC, that we thought that both Rakdos versions were good against Amalia, but the Amalia was good against Phoenix specifically. So I guess we'll need more testing to know for sure, obviously, and we'll see how the tournaments going forward look, and the online events, because people are going to be kind of off Pioneer for a while, it feels like, now that every time we start playtesting standard pretty hard.
Yeah.
And even a bit of modern focus. I think there's a big modern event coming up. I can't remember.
I think the RC next one, but the following one is modern again.
Right.
So we'll see. But yeah, that's
just pay attention to online play for Pioneer. it's gonna be looking crazy. I mean, it was already shooken up with Wilds of Eldraine and Caverns, but now we've got the bans and
Well,
there's the recent results here, all the new upgrades.
well, and I think the RCQC, like the RC will be modern, but I believe RCQs after standard will be. So
That's
that,
what it was.
so
Yeah.
that should be like our next time to like really think about Pioneer is probably like in the spring, but the later spring.
Right. And who knows what Karlov Manor will bring to Pioneer, because with people prepping for Standard, we're going to see like the best Standard decks at the MagicCon. And that usually gives people some ideas of what to start sneaking into Pioneer. And then with the RCQ season coming up, we're going to see some Karlov Manor mixed with LCI, mixed with WoW, mixed with whatever they're cooking in Pioneer. It should start being pretty interesting.
Yeah.
For the next RCQ season for Q2.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. We already talked about Phoenix decks and like them featuring Is It Charm and like Galvanic Iteration, but I think that part of why they did that is because we did see a good amount of combo decks with Amalia and with like Quintorius and even like Enigmatic Fires, and sometimes you having the extra turn or with Galvanic Iteration, the double extra turn to be like
Love that.
Like a Phoenix needs to get to their turn. And if you go, I'm going to have my Phoenixes out and I'm going to have 2 more turns, you're dead. Like you just don't have enough time to live. And so I think that it was probably mirror breaking and breaking for some of the combo decks. And so I think that's probably why that was in there. Just trying to think of like why were these like choices, these like flex slots chosen, and that's kind of like my thought behind it.
Yeah, the time walk, I feel like it's just when they gave it up, it was like, okay, this isn't consistent, right? It was just kind of what's the word, a liability. And now it's like, hey man, if I can get this off, I can just like one shot somebody, get them out of here, go to my next round refreshed. It almost feels like when like control decks started playing combo pieces, I was watching I saw online Andrea Mengucci, my favorite person, posted up a 4-color deck without beans because it was banned, right? And he was playing the new Nissa combo that they do with like the Plane Bound Accomplice or whatever in the 4-color deck. And I always really liked the combo in that deck because that it felt like it was a deck that could like grind with anybody, but needed like a combo finish to really kind of like, one, make their bad matchups better. Like Tron, if you combo finish Tron, Splinter Twin was always good against Tron because even if they were like a bad control deck, they were just like, well, the combo, you have an answer, I win. And so sometimes that just kind of gets there. It's not as good of a combo as Splinter Twin, obviously, but it feels like that type of like flex slot where, okay, I have this time walk or double time walk if I get the magical Christmas land. If I can just pop this off, it resolves, maybe get a connive trigger. My Arclight Phoenixes are going to come in for 6, if I'm lucky, 9. Really lucky, 12. But like even just 6 or 9 twice, in addition to like Play with Fire or whatever, Ledger Shredder, that's usually going to be enough, or their own Shocklands. And then you keep your flyers. Now they have to have evasion. Muller's Copter can't block everybody if he can block anybody. So I don't know. I definitely agree, and I think that the time walk was worth playing for sure. Obviously, it showed. Even if they didn't win the whole event, they did perform really well. And there was two Phoenix decks in the top 8, which is pretty sweet. So the top 8 ended up being Phoenix beating Rakdos, Amalia losing to the blue-white control deck, Amalia losing to Phoenix. Which is interesting because Phoenix I thought was supposed to be like an easier matchup for them, and then there was 2 Rakdos mid-range players, but they played each other. So all the top 8 matches, though, every single match was a 2-1, so a best of 3, except the Rakdos mid-range was a 2-0 versus them, and the final was a 2-0 where the blue-eye control deck beat the Phoenix player, and the other Phoenix player beat the Rakdos mid-range deck, and then blue-white beat Phoenix again, but just crushed it. So blue-white just beats up on Phoenix. Maybe that list was just good. Maybe that guy was running hot. Whatever it was, Phoenix performed well, but blue-white control was the real big winner. It was kind of awesome to watch.
Yeah, and I think the big testament, as if I could like sum it up, you're not on temporary lockdown, you're wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
You're
Yeah,
wrong.
you definitely need temporary lockdown. The card is just so good right now. And then, like, notably, a lot of people were playing quick studies over memory deluge, which I think Frank and I agree was kind of better. Quick study, just honestly, like, went from just playing it in standard. I'm like, man, this divination friendship over. Quick study is so good. Drawing those 3 cards, being able to do that as soon as turn 3. I feel like it makes you more consistent now as well. Because like sometimes it was hard to get to 4 lands in blue white. If you had a good hand, you're like, oh, 3 lands, 4 interaction spells, like feels so good. And then you just don't draw that 4th land. And you have to cast a memory deluge and you just can't. And if you miss a land drop in control, that just feels terrible. Where like quick study is like just that perfect amount of mana where you're like, okay, I'm getting 2 cards out of this. I can do it on his end step. If they didn't force me to kill anything or counterspell, it's not really competing with any slots, where like Memory Deluge kind of competes with your Shadow the Wreckage or Wandering Emperor slot. Your 4 drops are kind of tight already.
Yeah, it's gummed up because you've got Verdict, you've got Emperor, and then you're running 4 Deluges. The only way for you to like try and smooth your draws early is just Shark Typhoon.
Yeah.
So like,
or the list that would play like the Considers, which I Considers are, and there was like no good one. If they had Serum Visions, maybe, but there's like no good 1-drop for Pioneer Draw.
Yeah, I agree. And so really like, even though the top list didn't have a quick study in it, a lot of the list top 100 did have a number of quick studies, somewhere between 2 and 4. Really, really like the card. Think it's going to be like a standard unless we get a better draw spell in Love Manor.
Yeah. Interesting that the Yorion version wasn't playing quick study. You'd think they would want more cards, but I guess
yeah,
it is what it is.
I agree.
That guy won, so we're wrong.
Yeah, so we wrong. All right, well, that's all that we have for RC Atlanta. Before we get into our wrap up, I know Stan wanted to talk a little bit about what was happening in the Modern Challenge.
Yeah, so kind of a short episode this time, but I did definitely want to talk about the Modern Challenge because, like I said, I was going on Twitter a lot. I wanted to get all this info for you guys. And then one of my buddies posted, I think it was Robert Taylor actually, he posted that Sodek won the Modern Challenge with Dredge. And for those who don't know, Sodek is a really, really good Magic player, but he plays a lot of Dredge. And he was like, Dredge is back. It was never gone. Just doing his, his revenge tour. But he was saying how like the format actually feels kind of good for Dredge right now. So if Todd gets a chance, I'll maybe have him put up a couple of his tweets or his deck list. But in general, it was kind of cool to see because, one, I'm a huge fan of Dredge. I actually really like the deck a lot. One of my buddies that comes to the shop to play our locals every Thursday for Modern, he also really likes the deck, and we would play it a lot. He would lend me the deck. We'd always try to see if either of us could perform well with it in like what was the most hateful Modern format ever, with like all the elementals and whatnot. And when we did well with the deck, when we can go like 3-1 or 4-0, it felt really nice. We were playing the version with 4 Thrilling Discoveries and 4 Cathartic Reunions. So you're just like mulligan until you get the 2-drop and then cast it, go from there. What I found really interesting about Sodek's list is that he was playing 4 Tome Scours, which for those who don't know, Tome Scour is 1 blue. Target player mills 4 cards. And some of the casual players actually might know the card better than competitive players because it's like one of the OG mill cards. Like you see 4 of these in like your local team's deck playing blue black mill. Mill you 4, wait a precinct 6. I'm gonna crush you. Face's Phantasm.
Actually, top 5.
It's 5. Oh my god, 5. Yeah, even better. Top 5. Yeah. That actually is crazy. Top. Yeah, so you'd play that, you'd have Wait a Precinct 6, Face's Phantasm, whatever. It was like the worst deck ever. But
the only reason I knew that is because like that was one of the first decks that I had when you were like playing with your friends. So you didn't
Timmy.
You right. Like you didn't have cards. It was like just what you threw together.
Yeah.
There was no lists. I wasn't looking at MTG. It was like my first, I don't know, like month of Magic, and the only Magic I knew is like playing with my friends. Nothing is legal. It's just all of it. You're putting all of it together, and we had like the budget of budget mill lists. So I remember that card very clearly. I was like, wait, I have to look this up because I think I know it.
I remember being at church, and I was still pretty new to Magic as a kid. My little cousin comes to me, and he's like, deck idea. He just shows me Tome Scour and Jace's Phantasm, the one that's like a 5/5 flyer if you have like X number of cards in your opponent's graveyard. And I'm just like, that's not bad, man. Like, and he started smoking some of his friends at school. I was like, maybe this
Cooking.
is pretty good.
Cooking.
Oh man. But yeah, anyways. So Tom Scour, he has 4 of, and he posted it in a tweet, but he said specifically, he's like, Tom Scour it was overperforming. He said that he really liked the card. It was the best card in the deck for him. He actually in his list was playing only 2 otherworldly gaze. I know we talked about that card earlier for like Phoenix, where you can like mill cards into your graveyard really fast. Dredge really likes otherworldly gaze because you can cast it out of the graveyard. It's a really good their turn instant. Like before, when I would play Dredge, it'd be like your turn otherworldly gaze, my turn cathartic reunion. Feels so good, especially if my otherworldly put bad cards in the graveyard, or not bad cards, like dredgers in the graveyard, and then you're just like, yes, because sometimes the problem was, okay, I only have like 1 dredger to discard, so dredge 5 didn't hit a dredger, combo's over, and you kind of just lose from there, especially with like Urza Saga just getting a relic of just instantly or whatever. But anyways, he was also only playing only 2 thrilling discoveries. So he went down to 6 on the 2 mana draw 3 cards, where you discard 2 cards, draw 3, etc., and only 2 otherworldly cases for the 4 Tome Scours. I think it's pretty interesting because obviously Dredge in the past has played cards like Shriekhorn, which is like 1 mana artifact, tap, target player mills 2 cards, but it has 3 charges, so you can like self, upkeep, mill yourself, and then do it again 1 more time. See how you go from there. But the Tome Scour is just like, here's the 5 cards right away, let's just get it done. Turn 1 do this, maybe even turn 2 do it if you don't have access to Cathartic Reunion, and probably not the worst thing in the world, honestly. The other thing I found interesting about the deck is that he said that he really didn't like the Conflagrate, which Dredge kind of always plays because it's like a fireball out of the graveyard. But he was saying it was like a necessary evil for when like the burn plan was like the most efficient way to win. But if he could cut it, he would have been happy to, which I think is kind of interesting because in the past, Conflagrate was always nice. It was like fill up your hand a life from the loam, which he wasn't playing at all, and then just throw your hand at your opponent's face. So yeah, I guess with no life from the loam, kind of hard to fill up his hand. And I think his version actually no green, just every other color. So pretty interesting. He said that only Amulet Titan was a rough matchup. So for those that play Modern, if you only lose to 1 deck, your deck's honestly pretty good. So I'm wondering if we'll see a resurgence of Dredge now that people saw him win. More people are going to be trying to list online. Maybe we'll see some technology, because like we talked about before, once 1 or 2 people try something out, everybody starts putting their eyes on it. You get like the hive mind working on it. And once the hive mind starts brewing, it gets really crazy. I mean, it's kind of how Amalia turned into it is, and why I think that the Spelunking deck that showed up at the RC, even though it didn't perform well, Sophie Miller didn't make Tade 2, but their team, the other 2 people, I believe, didn't make top 100, but they both made Tade 2 with Spelunking combo. People are going to have their eyes on these kind of decks, and the hive mind just kind of does what it does. We'll see if that has some format impact, because I'd personally love to see Dredge be playable again and have a good reason not to unban Faithless Looting or Golgari Grave Troll.
I was just thinking that. I was like so glad they didn't unban Faithless Looting, because if Dredge is making a comeback and it's already like getting close, then yeah, keep that, put that thing back where it came from.
And I'll be honest, I think Faithless Looting is strong. I wouldn't want to unban Faithless Looting right now in Modern because of every other deck that would use it, including Dredge, but like more so like there could be like Reanimate Persist decks. What Martyr Pyromancer is going to be like a destructive scam persist deck. Like Faithless Looting, I think would be way too strong in Modern.
I think
even without Dredge.
Yeah, I think Persist would be really gross. Like it would be a consistent turn 2. Like, oh, here's my
I mean, we're already playing Fable the Mirror Breaker. Like Faithless Looting is like skip all that. I win. At least now. Back in the day, we were trying to play it with fair cards. It would be. I think it's just. But anyways, that was kind of what he was doing. And then I think the last notable thing is that he mentioned in his sideboard he had no Chalice of the Voids, because his game plan against Cascade was that they were all playing Endurance anyway. So instead of getting out their combo to slow it down, he went with Anti-Hate and then just did 4 late and sync better against like the entire format anyway. There's still quite a bit of burn running around and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool to see. I love modern where it's at right now, and if Dredge is gonna make a comeback and start, joining the format, I'm down for that as well. It should be fun. Anybody who's worried about Dredge, I think we still have to see if it's gonna be a real thing. I don't know. As a Tron player, I'm like, I would rather play against Living End than Dredge because like the Relic Opportunities plan doesn't just like kind of like hose them. Like with Relic, you're like you can't do anything Living End until they force you. Where Dredge is like, I can force you to pop that and then just keep going, and it's like, please stop. So yeah, I mean for Tron specifically, I think Dredge is definitely a scarier deck. As far as the rest of the format's concerned, Sodak says it's only Amulet Titan. Everybody else better start being ready with their graveyard hate. Other than that, I didn't really have too much else to talk about. We'll definitely have to start prepping more standard. Were we going to announce the giveaway, or should we post that later on Twitter?
No, we could do it.
So Frank and I were thinking, because the Pioneer RC looked the way it did, and it's the newest set, that we were going to give away a set booster box of Caverns of Ixalan, because everybody needs their Spelunkings and their Get Lost, etc. And it's just a cool thing to give away for you guys for supporting us. Obviously, we can't do it subscriber only or Patreon only. It's just I'm pretty sure that's not kosher, but it's going to be open to everybody who watches, and we'll make some posts on Twitter, etc., with whatever the stipulations are. With that being said, I think it's going to be free shipping probably only to the continental US, in case there's some anomaly with any other location that may win. If we ship to your location and they're trying to charge us $100 or something, we might have to work something out or figure it out. Maybe I can order you a box in your own country, but whatever works from there, we'll definitely figure out, and we'll post stipulations for it soon.
Yeah, it'll be like the normal, like subscribe, retweet, all of that business.
That's what you guys should have already done, so it'll work out.
So now you have incentive. With that being said, we really appreciate you listening to our episode. Big shout out to first Forsat Gaming for allowing us to do the recording here in the store. It is Christmas time, and if you want to get someone a gift, you're probably getting a little too close to Christmas now, but please go ahead and give them a shout to try and get some Caverns of Ixalan. We just said you will need Spelunking. And with Standard coming up, it's great to order singles from them as well. They're really on top of having stuff in stock and ready. And I'm assuming with that being said, you might not see something because all of our local players will be like, hurry before all the people online. But please go out and support them. Shout out to Nancy Steroids for our intro and outro music. We always appreciate the work that they do. Go ahead and give a listen to them on Spotify as well. Shout out to MTD Chicago for recording our videos, and we're starting to do more recordings for MTD Chicago here at the store as well. So keep an eye out for Sal's page. And
I have 2 cameras from Sal now, so if you want to get your gameplay on YouTube, come play at our locals.
Yep, head on over here to play as well. That's it. We again really appreciate. That is it, right? You looked at me.
Shout outs to Todd for helping us out with all the tech stuff. He's over there chilling, making sure we sound good on the camera for you guys. And also shout outs to our patrons, as always, for supporting us. We really appreciate you guys. And if there's anything we can do for you guys or any feedback, please post it in the Discord. Let us know. We want to talk about what you guys want to hear.
Yeah, and the visuals that Todd does, primo for all of the watching.
All the editing is awesome.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you so much for tuning into our episode. Next, we'll probably be getting a deep dive into Standard, but until then, continue listening, and thank you for being here.
Catch you next time.